ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing.
Maybe. Sometimes.
Tell me about this. I want to know more.
Oh, yeah. No.
Holy cow.
We've had a lot of fun.
So it's day 3 of the school year, and I am going in already for a parent meeting today.
Oh, is it
a one-on-one parent meeting?
No, not a one-on-one like your kid's already causing problems. No, a whole big group parent meeting, and there are actually 2 of them today, and I'm skipping one because really I don't need to go to 2.
They start right in, man.
I know.
Yeah. Are you part of the PTA this year?
No, this is at the middle school where my son just started. So.
Oh.
Is that the same one your daughter went to?
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the meetings is about the math curriculum, and my husband went to it when my daughter was there, so I'm calling it good. Even though it may be a completely different thing. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, you might want to be careful of that whole PTA situation anyway, so.
I know. We're gonna get into that. But first I'll say welcome to Parenting Roundabout, a weekly podcast about the things that parents are talking about, obsessing about, and complaining about right now. I am Catherine Haleko, and I have retired from the PTA now that my kids are no longer in elementary school. With me today are Terri Morrow.
Hello. I miss my days of being able to be involved in a school. Once kids got to, college, they don't want you anywhere around there. So I'm retired, but
you're forcefully retired.
Sadly retired. Yes, I was laid off.
And I also have Nicole Eridix here on the podcast today.
I'm here, and PTAs and I don't converge. I've had too many years experience being a teacher, so yes, I avoid PTA related stuff. I'll help when needed, but I'm not an active participant. Which is maybe a good thing.
Right. So today on the podcast, we are going to talk about school volunteering and PTAs and the dangers hidden therein. And we're going to discuss where we lived in college. We're going to shout out some stuff that we like on the Roundabout Roundup. And Terri and I are also going to bring you a short interview with each other about the Paralympic Games, which are just starting out this week.
Oh, yeah.
So that is what's happening in the podcast. What else is happening in your worlds this morning?
Is everybody's kids back to school now besides mine?
Yep.
Our town is starting today, which is why you may hear traffic on my microphone.
Mm-hmm.
The school next door.
Oh, no. We've been in session for over a month now. This is like whatever.
Old news.
I have to actually... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm overseeing the back-to-school photos.
There are so many today.
Are there? I haven't checked Facebook lately.
It depends on where all your Facebook friends live. If you.
That is true.
Today,
although I did enjoy yours, Catherine. Your kids are growing up.
Yes, I know.
I have to at some point today. I have to walk over by the high school. They created a new parking lot and paved it over. And I just before the school year started, I saw that they painted the lines. And to my eye, perhaps it's an optical illusion, but the spaces look too small. So I have to walk over and see if there's actually cars parked there, or if some are stuck at awkward angles, or if people have had to take 2 spaces, or maybe I'm just wrong. This is my big question for the start of the new school. Can anybody actually park in that thing?
Inquiring minds want to know.
This is where I am with schools now. I have no other school concerns.
Other than the lines that they use in the parking lot.
That you don't even have to park it.
I don't even have to park it.
Because you're not going there and because you live right there.
Because I live right there.
Wow.
But I did have my day.
Yes.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I was there all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. Should we launch into our...
Yeah.
It seems like a good time.
Big issue that we're speaking about today. which happens to be in my neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought
Just
of you
down
when
the
I read
road.
that.
Yeah, just down the road. So I wasn't actually aware of it until Terri and Catherine brought it up, but there's been a week-long series in the LA Times that's getting a lot of buzz right now because it has to do with PTAs and moms and kids, and it's just a very strange case of a mom who worked as a school volunteer, and she also did some after-school stuff, from what I understand.
This one does.
Right. She basically ran the school's after-school enrichment program.
Which is kind of, it sounds like a different job than a PTA job, so I'm not sure what that, I don't know. Anyway.
But it was volunteer, I believe.
It was volunteer, yeah. So anyway, I guess there was an issue over a young boy in the after-school program, and his mother got very upset over something that had happened. I think the child was left outside of the school for a couple minutes. I guess the door had locked, and anyway, so now there's quite a few, or quite a big deal being made because they figure that the mom who's doing the volunteering was targeted by the child's mother, and all sorts of things have ensued. So,
well, they tried to frame her
They
and get
tried to
her
frame her.
arrested for drug possession, which
Yeah.
is, gosh, all the times I've volunteered, and I think about how vulnerable you are, and I've often worried about what if somebody wanted to mess with me in that way, how easy it would be, and accusations, and lock your car doors while you're volunteering at your kid's school, I think is the moral of this
That's
story.
one lesson you can learn from this particular story.
Amongst other things,
and I feel, my heart goes out to the school volunteer, because those situations, unfortunately, sometimes they just happen where, maybe you've just, turned your back for a minute, or the door has shut and you didn't realize it, or something has happened. But I just find that schools are rife with emotions that run high constantly. And anyway, it makes me think of all sorts of situations that happened when I was teaching. So I want to ask you guys, have you ever had a conflict with another parent at school? And hopefully you weren't framed for drug possession, but how was it resolved? Terri, anything with you?
I'm trying to think. I volunteered a lot, and I was in the school a lot. I was volunteered in the library, and so I would spend whole days there, and got to be fairly well known, I think, by the staff. Not so much by the parents, though. I didn't have that much interaction with the parents. And absolutely, there are these things where things happen just because we're all human. And to one person, it seems like nothing. But I've certainly been on the other side of it, where something has happened to my child and everybody thinks, oh, it's no big deal, but it's a big deal to me. So, I can sort of see that side too. But I would never make that leap to, and therefore this person must pay. Let me see how I can get them sent to jail.
Right.
And I think my conflicts were all more with the school and with particular educators. So I was that parent who was gunning for you, Nicole. I was the one who the IEP team was barring the door from. More than that, I don't think I really had that much interaction with other parents while I was volunteering, because I had my little realm. I was in the library, and I was just dealing with kids and teachers. But it seems like there may have from time to time been something when I was a class mom of somebody not receiving a call and being upset about it. But not, and certainly lots of complaining to your friends about people.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Behind backs. Totally. But face-to-face conflict, I'm not remembering it. I've blocked it out, apparently, if it was there. Catherine, have you ever gone toe-to-toe with another parent on that sort of situation?
I haven't, because number one, I am a big conflict avoider. So I would steer clear as much as I could. But I've seen it happen in just my kid's little small school, and maybe that's part of it, it's a small school, but where, and I don't know the whole story, but for some reason one of the parents felt targeted by a group of other parents, and was apparently made to feel really uncomfortable to the point where she left, she pulled her kids and left the school. And from all I could tell, it was all about, the social interactions with the parents. It didn't have anything to do with the education her kids were getting, which is just super sad. But, who knows? We don't know the whole story, but it's still so unfortunate. And that's, this LA Times article series just laid that out, but to a tremendous extreme. But that, kids are suffering because their parents have these petty jealousies, or these imagined slights, or what, I don't know what it is that causes adults to act this way. But it's just a shame when it plays out in such a way that the kids feel scared, or they feel like other parents feel like their kids can't get a good education because the social situation is so scary. So
well, I just feel, having been in the school system for many years as a teacher and a parent, honestly, I think people revert back to their school days when they get in that building. And whether they want to or not, they are reliving some of their own experiences, and that fear translates into being either overprotective of their own child or wanting something different for their own child. And you just see it over and over again, these parents that are bringing their own issues into their child's school experience, and that's when it's sad, and that's when you feel bad for the kids, because and the teachers too.
The teachers are often really stuck in the middle of it, aren't they?
They are, and often the target of some really, I feel for this woman who is volunteering, because there were, several occasions through, something seemingly minor, when a parent has just completely reacted in a way that you didn't expect, and you're having to sit there basically and let them vent and be angry, and that part of the job is really stressful, and I think that part of the job is what makes a lot of teachers leave, because a lot of parents come in with a lot of anger and emotion, because it has to do with their child, of course, right? We all want to protect our children, but it's a direct hit at the teacher, and quite often it's nothing really that the teacher can resolve at that time. So I've had a lot of seen a lot of parents, and been around, and have been the target of quite a few. So it's a really, I'm not kidding when I tell you that emotions run high in a school all day, every day. It's quite a interesting. It would be an interesting sociological study. But anyway, So that kind of, and a lot of those parents were also very involved in the school, and part of big organizations like the PTA, and so you almost felt like you were just being really careful. When you're
right, and because the ones who have these agendas are so vocal, and that's so dangerous to the teacher and the principal.
How it could ruin your career. It could ruin your career. I've seen teachers fired, and parents or principals ousted, and I mean, in some cases it was warranted, in some cases it wasn't, and that's the power of the PTA. So what's the PTA like at your school, Catherine?
Well, as I said, I retired now. I mean, there of course are ways that I could be involved with my kids' schools now that they're in middle and high school, but I think I'm stepping back for now. Partly because I am very involved in their extracurricular activities. So in the last few years, I hadn't gone to any of the meetings of the parent-teacher organization at my son's school simply because I could not add one more evening meeting into my life. You know, if it happened that the meeting was on a day when I didn't have to be running kids somewhere, I was not about to go add that to my schedule.
Sure.
So, but you know, it had its ups and downs, I guess I would say, at the school that we just left, where for certain years it was a lot of fun, and I got to work with friends, and we got a lot of good stuff done. And then other years, not as much. Just kind of depended on the people and the principal and the teachers.
Yeah. How about you, Terry? What was the PTA like at your kids' school?
In elementary school, I really did not get involved in the PTA. I had my thing of working in the school library, and I was always a class mom. I never went to the PTA meetings. I think I kind of said, you know what, that's not my thing. But I do know that the special ed classes kind of suffered by the fact that they had nobody representing them. A couple of times I was asked, could you go and say, hey, this class needs this thing? And those were the only times I ever went to the meetings. So I do encourage parents to do that, to be part of that, even though I wasn't. When my kids got to in middle school, I was involved in the PTA. In fact, I was, I think, vice president of the PTA a couple of years, just because vice president was the only job that you really didn't have anything to do. So it's like, okay, you need a name, I'll go ahead and be the vice president.
Put my name.
I had no obligations based on that, and I still continued to do the library, and I did the yearbook, and I had my other things that I did. In high school, I started out going to the PTA, and that is a place where I did see one of these situations where there was an intense disagreement amongst parents, and there was accusations of financial impropriety, and just it got uglier and uglier each meeting. And I just finally said, you know what? Don't need this in my life. Have fun. Yeah. And eventually, I think it was disbanded. I don't know if I think they've started up again, but it was a really ugly thing for a while and impacted a lot of people. So, that's probably the closest I've gotten to the sort of thing that they were talking about in the LA Times article of people really, targeting each other and making charges and accusations. And it was awful. And it's, I had other ways. I mean, I was involved in the marching band. So I was on the board, I was the secretary for the marching band, and I was very involved in that. And I thought, this is going to be my thing at the high school. I don't need this other thing.
Because
so I've had a mixed relationship with it.
And that can turn you off for years and years.
Yeah. It was not fun. So, I think it's important to participate in the PTA. People do get into it to an unhealthy degree, and both in terms of wanting to lead and in terms of wanting to undercut leadership. People get involved. There's the cliche of the PTA mom who everybody hates and is the extension of all our cheerleader resentment from our youth. And I haven't run into too much of that, but there is a feeling that when you give so much of your time to the school, you do expect something back. You can't help but expect something back. We're all human. And so you expect to be able to get your kid where you want your kid to be. And you expect to be, other parents to respect your effort. And when they don't, you get mad. But I'm not unhappy to be out of that aspect of it.
I don't know, maybe
miss the connection with the teachers that I used to have.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be more of a democratic process. I don't like the idea of having the president of the PTA and the vice president. And I mean, I know that there has to be leadership, but I think it just sets people up for behavior that they might not necessarily display in other situations. And it can really, the ones that I've been around have been so cliquey and so, I don't know. I think I'm tainted.
I think the problem is from being inside it a little bit. I think to get rid of the clickiness and the power trips and all of that, you need to have huge participation. But you'll never get huge participation because people think it's clicky and power trippy. So it's a no-win situation, unless the problem is that the people who are in charge and throwing their weight around are the only people who are stepping up to do that stuff.
Right.
So and everybody else is leaving because they can't stand them. And so then where do you get your next level of leaders? That's in this thing we had in the high school PTA. It was like everybody had a problem with this person, but nobody else was volunteering. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. Or although, there are also situations where the PTA leadership won't allow anybody else to come in and offer their help. So it's just I don't know. Like I said at the very beginning of this conversation, people get into schools and their behavior becomes.
It's true. It's true. It's like the system needs to be burned to the ground and started back up again from scratch.
Oh boy.
But it's never going to happen because they need, there's never a time when you don't need that infrastructure in place.
Exactly. So how can we make it better then? Like, how can we encourage? What would we do in its place? How would we create a system where teachers and principals can do their job and be trusted, and parents can feel like their children are getting a good education and can communicate with teachers? Like, how do you...
You're asking a lot, Nicole.
When the androids take over and humanity is eliminated from the equation, things will be a lot more peaceful.
How can we create an environment where parents want to be in there and volunteering and helping and not feel threatened? I don't know. And teachers as well.
Yeah.
Thoughts, ladies?
I feel like the internet is the answer to a lot of that it's not utilized sufficiently, and that it could be a big democratizing thing, but I still find so many parents who aren't into it. And,
that's true.
So it's maybe going to be 2 generations from now when it will be all online. There's no reason we need to have PTA meetings in the library. There's no reason those can't be online. There's no reason there can't be a forum where anybody could just present, hey, I have this problem, I saw this thing, and everybody could crowdsource the solution to it. The technology exists. We all use it every day in other things, but it's so slow to get brought over into the school. I know some schools have it, probably to a limited degree, and there's all sorts of concerns about confidentiality, and there's all sorts of really good reasons why people stand in the way of it. But I think something along those lines is what's needed. I mean, certainly since parent portals have gone up, so you can check your kids' grades, you can check all that stuff. People are embracing that. I know
but
there's
just getting
homework online. You can put your kids' paper online. You can see it. All that interactive stuff that needs to move to the PTA level. But it hasn't around here, I don't think, except in the most rudimentary and clunky and proprietary way.
Yeah, I mean, I had years ago, our parent-teacher group wanted to make a Facebook page, just for communication and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And boy, were there some people who were very resistant to that. And it wasn't really about privacy. It was about controlling the flow of information, I think. So, people need to...
Not everybody wants...
Wake up and smell...
democracy.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, really? Crush my bubble.
And also, I mean, somebody would have to ride the forums pretty hard to make sure they didn't get off into nastiness.
And
then once you do that, then you're back into having the flow of information restricted. So I understand that there are problems with it. I understand why people are afraid of it. But that seems to me to be the only way this becomes... we get maximum participation.
Right, and I agree with you that, just having to go to a meeting was a big turnoff for me. Yeah. So there were things that I certainly did. I would be more than happy to help out with various tasks if it didn't involve me going to a meeting.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if people are YouTubing meetings, videoing them or doing them as a Google
Hangout,
so that people who can't be there watch it on their phone or their
Yeah.
computer. Well, I don't know if people would, but there should be some way to open that up.
Uh-huh.
Or live tweet. You know what? Somebody needs to live tweet PTA meetings. Wouldn't that be fun?
We have newspaper reporters that live tweet the school board meetings.
Sure. I mean, our school board meetings are televised and put on TV. We have so many schools in the district, it probably would be impractical to do that with PTA meetings, but certainly they could do something small scale. Some parent put up a YouTube channel. It exists. The possibilities exist. Parents don't.
They're not doing it. I mean, maybe
We need
it'll
more
take
techie
it'll
parents.
take our the next generation, right? Our kids' generation to maybe,
I guess.
or you can move to San Jose. I don't know.
That's right. Or let Apple
Except
just needs to buy every school district and integrate
Oh boy.
a complete system of transparent communication.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, lots to think about. I mean, it's just a never-ending topic, and I feel it's just such a terrible, sad situation what's happening in Irvine, and that a husband's involved too, and it's just a real mess.
That is a weird thing. We'll
It's
be seeing
weird.
that on crime, one of these crime story reenactments.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Or Law and Order SVU or
Lifetime
somewhere along the way.
movie.
That's going to be on TV multiple times, I think.
Yeah.
'Cause it's just made for, and everybody will get their vicarious thrill about when PTA goes bad or when
Yeah.
volunteering, that volunteer mom you can't stand.
Oh. Oh my
Just
gosh.
glad I'm out of it.
Yeah.
Nobody ever tried to sandbag me, to my knowledge.
Well, why don't we flash back to a happier time?
Even further. Yes, for our special Friday speed round this week, Amanda joined us for another flashback discussion. Let's hear that right now.
So since my son has lived in 3 different places in the 3 years that he's been in university, he's been at home, he's been in a fraternity house, and now he's in his own apartment. It makes me wonder, or it reminds me of all the different places that I lived when I went to college. Some were not as luxurious as where he and others were pretty darn good. So what about you guys? Where did you live when you were in college? Did you have roommates? Were you on your own? Were you in a basement suite with one window?
My goodness. By the time I was married. I got married really young the first time. So I was married living in family housing at 19. Isn't that kind of nuts?
Wow.
Is that crazy?
Was it nicer than non-married housing, or?
I really don't know, I guess. I mean, a little bit. It was tiny little apartments, but I don't think it was all that different than the dorms. It was just sort of set up a little bit differently. But so, I don't know. I'm kind of envious of the dorm life, Never had it. Never will. Although it does feel like a dorm frat house around here half the time.
With all those males in your household.
I miss my daughter. She needs to come back.
She needs to offset.
Yes, totally.
Some of this testosterone that's happening.
I lived in dorms quite a bit, but some are good, some are not so good. And then I lived in a basement suite of a house, and the people above me, when I moved in, warned me that the wife was pregnant and was going to have a home birth.
Oh my.
So I might wake up one night or be at home one day and she would be giving birth above me. So that kind of freaked me out when I was 19, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Terri? Where did you live?
Well, I was at UC Santa Barbara for 4 years. The first year I was in the dorms and with a friend that I knew from my high school. And then the second year, she and I went in on an apartment in Isla Vista with another girl we knew from home and a friend of hers. So then we were in a 2-bedroom apartment off campus. And that had some stressors associated with it. And so for the next 2 years, I was in a studio apartment off campus. So I was on my own, and that was very nice.
Now, was Isla Vista as happening as it is today?
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was a fun place to live, and it was close enough to campus that everybody rode bikes, so
Yeah.
we rode our bikes onto campus. And it was a nice little place to live, a small community, and I worked at a church that was there in Isla Vista, so it was good.
Which is
I
the
enjoyed it.
difference between going to school in Maine where people ski on campus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking we took our snowmobiles sometimes.
I know. Catherine, where'd you live? What'd you do?
I lived in dorms for the first couple of years. My first year was, one of those really ancient classic dorms where, it was actually called the Quad, and
Yes.
it was it all except for one tiny piece of it had been renovated, and of course I lived in the unrenovated part of it, which we wore as a badge of honor,
Right.
but it was pretty gross. But at least it was very conveniently located. But it didn't have like the nice blonde wood furniture and better bathrooms that the other part had. And then my second year I lived in a dorm that was apartment style with like a little kitchen and a living space. And then my final 2 years I lived off campus in an apartment, and where we had mice. First of all, it was the ground floor, and and I remember sitting by myself in the living room one night, like reading and just watching a mouse like scurry. I'm like, can't you have the decency to not show up until we're in bed? Like, you're so brazen. You're coming out here in the middle of the day. That's not okay when we're awake. But it was still a good experience getting to live off campus and be in an apartment. And but I'm also glad I had some dorm experience as well. I think that's kind of a good thing for students to experience at some point.
Yeah,
It is.
it's good for starting when you start at school to have that experience to kind of get you into it.
It's a nice sort of ease into being a grown-up, I think,
Right.
Yeah.
You have an RA that's like the resident adult that's supposed to help you,
No.
Yeah.
and you allegedly you don't have to clean the bathrooms, but you might want to.
Although in the dorms in the universities around here, they put like 5 students to a dorm. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, it's worse than living at
Like
home.
in one room?
In one room. They'll
Wow.
have bunk beds. So there'll be 2 sets of bunk beds, and then there'll be like a trundle bed.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like they just cram them in here.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh,
Well, in
thanks.
my
Well,
day, we only had 2 in the room, but one girl on my hall had her boyfriend living there with her and her roommates. So I guess
I'm sure her
occasionally it's
roommate
1 or 2.
appreciated it.
Yeah.
That wasn't awkward at all, I'm sure.
Well, it's interesting because my daughter has stayed at a couple different college dorms in the past 2 summers doing skating camps, and she now has opinions about dorm life and about food service and how the food was better at this one versus that one, and I know that universities have to take that into account.
Yeah.
Some of them spend a lot of money on facilities to try to attract students. So I guess they're not doing that at the places where they're cramming them in.
No.
5-2.
Yeah, along with all the back to school pictures on Facebook, I've been seeing my new dorm room pictures on Facebook, and they look a lot nicer than I remember dorm rooms looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and they have all that coordinated bedding and, pictures and I don't know. I just
Yeah, there was none of that happening when I went.
No, me neither.
I just remember being really amazed and impressed at how my roommate could sleep on a bed that had so much stuff on it. Just like books, clothes, dishes, whatever, backpack, like just all piled up on top of her bed. She just lay down and go to sleep. Like, it
Yuck.
was, yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah.
So that's college life.
Yes.
And remember that you can hear a new speed round every Monday through Thursday, and Amanda is on all of them, or most of them, depending on her schedule. We do what we can.
Right. So now we're going to bring you some of the things that we have encountered along the way on the internet or elsewhere in the past few days and weeks. So some of the things that we've read or seen or used recently that we want to shout out and share with you. Terri, do you have something to share?
I do. It's not particularly serious, but you know what? If your kids are out of the house for the first time in a while and you want to just waste some time on line, I got the video for you. I mentioned in a speed round recently that I have been very much into In the Heights, the Broadway musical, having morphed over from Hamilton into all things Lin-Manuel Miranda. And we did a speed round on documentaries recently, at which I failed to remember to mention this. So I will mention it now. There is a documentary that was on PBS about In the Heights transitioning onto Broadway. You know, it starts with them kind of starting out with the challenge of translating the show from the off-Broadway version to Broadway, and it ends with them winning the Tony. And in between, there's 6 parts on YouTube of this PBS video that shows them going through all of this stuff. If you're into Hamilton, it's all the same creative people, and Chris Jackson is in it, younger with hair, and also Karen Olivo, who is going to be Angelica in Chicago, and Mandy Gonzalez, who's going to be Angelica now on Broadway, now that Renee Elise Goldsberry has left. So there's a lot of Hamilton overlap, and it's just lovely. It's just a great documentary if you're interested in Broadway and musical theater. There's scenes from the show, and there's also just people talking about what all this means to them, what their career has been like. There's just some beautiful moments. There's just one moment where this dancer who's been sharing his struggles sees a 7-story banner of himself unfurling to advertise the show, and another where they've done their opening night and it seems to have gone well, but they're waiting for the review because, of course, the wrong words from the New York Times and they're done. And how that plays out is just lovely. So I highly recommend it. I set up a playlist when we did our documentary speed round, and I will link to that. I put all 6 parts of this documentary on there. Go over there right now when you're done listening to this podcast and watch it. It's just wonderful, and it will brighten your day.
Nice. Nicole, how about you?
Well, I happened across this app this morning, and I wish I had had it this weekend for my daughter, who was struggling with her math.
Oh.
Yes, it was a math nightmare weekend.
Oh, can I just say again how glad I am to have anybody in school? I can't tell you how many math nightmare weekends I have.
This one looks pretty cool, though. I've got to check it out. But it's called Got It, and you basically take a photo of your math problem.
I saw that.
And then you go to this app and you can connect. It says you can instantly connect. I'd be interested in that. Connect with a tutor who can see that exact problem and help you work it through. And it's all like texting, so you don't have to, there's no visual interaction. But then the tutor just helps you work through the steps to solve the problem.
That is awesome.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Is it free?
So it's free. And it's on Android and Apple.
So, where were you when I needed that?
Seriously, right?
I have been the math tutor in my house, and I am not qualified.
No, me neither. And so we didn't have it this weekend, and I ended up rushing around trying to find a tutor who worked on a Sunday. Good luck with that. And ended up finding one and taking her. And anyway, this just would have been so much easier.
Lovely.
Yes, so there.
Well, listeners, if you have used that one, or if you know of any other similar apps to get you through math hell weekends, please let us know by commenting at parentingroundabout.com or on our Facebook page. We would love to hear it.
Yeah.
Catherine, how about you? What you got?
Actually, something similar is an app called Duolingo. It's not similar. It's not tutoring, but it is a language learning app.
Oh.
So we had downloaded it a while ago and used it a little bit, and then my daughter picked it up again over the weekend. And of course, all summer long, I've been telling her, like, go on Duolingo, like, just keep your Spanish skills up over the summer. And she never did. And then after 2 days of having Spanish class, she picked it up over the weekend. So it's just a little, an app that helps you learn and practice language skills. Nice. And it has 20 different languages. And cool. it is free also. And I like it because it's not just like matching up vocabulary words. You have to speak into the app in order for it to check your pronunciation. You have to write things in English and in the language that you're learning. You have to listen to things in the language, not just see them written down. So it's pretty comprehensive that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll be letting my daughter know about that tonight as she works on her French homework.
Yeah. It has some kind of goofy illustrations, but to me it's well done. So
great.
And free.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of languages and of the world, this week, the Paralympics began in Rio. They started on Wednesday night with the opening ceremony, and Catherine and I live tweeted that, and we should have the Storify version of that somewhere for y'all to look back on if you missed it. But we also had a little chat about it, and we're going to share that for our interview this week. So let's listen to me and Catherine talking Paralympics. So last night we watched the opening ceremony of the Rio Paralympics on NBC, which was time delayed from when it really was. You could have watched it live. So we could have watched it live streamed on the computer, like starting at 5 o'clock.
Oh.
And it became apparent as I was following the hashtag for Paralympics and opening ceremonies that different countries were broadcasting these things at different times.
Mm-hmm.
So some people were watching it in real time. Some people were watching it on an hour delay. I think I saw Canada or Great Britain starting like an hour before we did. So it was sort of a time switched
right
thing all over the place. But we watched it from 7 to 10:30 on NBC. What did you think of it, Catherine?
Yeah, it was on the NBC, some sort of sports channel.
Yes, NBCSN, or on my dial it said SH, but they're generally referring to it as SN. If you want to watch any of the Paralympics, find where that is on your cable dial. It's in the 200s on mine.
Yeah. So, I enjoyed it. It was a little shorter than the big Olympics opening ceremony, which we also watched and live tweeted. And I felt like this one, it still certainly had its slow parts and its slightly odd parts, but it was it was much less strange than the Olympics one, and I felt like it was more cohesive and made more sense.
Yes, they weren't trying as hard.
Right, and
smaller themes,
but yet, they were expressed better so that you could get what they were doing. They started with the beach and, sort of a tribute to Rio, and they had some nice, like they had the samba circle where it was a circle of people playing drums and singing and things, and then it kind of became this set of gears which evoked maybe wheelchairs or bicycles. So that was neat. Things like that I thought made a little more sense than what we saw before. What did you think?
I thought so too. Well, I appreciated the fact that it was significantly shorter, and yet it still felt endless.
Yes.
I think it's a large block of time for which there is not a lot of content.
Right.
So things just kind of stretch out longer than they need to be. The parade of athletes, there's nothing you can do about that. And you can't complain about it either, because this is their moment.
Right. They all deserve
that.
They all deserve their time.
We were trying to decide whether they had the same uniforms as their Olympic team. I think a lot of them were different. They, at any rate, seemed a lot more casual. I saw fewer airline attendants, and more just looked like sport shirts and khakis and,
Right. I think the USA ones looked similar to me.
Yes, they did. Unfortunately, because I have the same issues with white pants as I did on the Olympics.
And now it's after Labor Day.
Yes.
And the Australians, we noticed, they kept the same jacket, but they got these sweet, bright colored pants.
They didn't have those. Those pants were not in the Olympics, right?
I really don't think so, because I feel like we would have noticed them.
Because those pants were excellent.
Yes.
That I think at the end of the night I gave them the gold medal for pants.
Yes.
Because they crushed it. That was awesome. And just the right mix of dressy on top, party on the bottom. So
Right.
and not too many people can pull off yellow pants, but in the context, I think it worked.
It worked. And I did have to wonder, though, like a traditional blazer sport coat kind of thing, which is what so many of them wore.
Yeah.
It's hard to wear that in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it bunches up weird, and I don't know if it's comfortable, and I feel like a little more attention maybe should have been paid to that. I mean, obviously not every Paralympic athlete is in a wheelchair by any means, but I still feel like maybe that could have been, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's why so many of them, I felt like a lot fewer of them had jackets or blazers than did at the Olympics. So maybe that's part of the reason that they went with a more simple look, just for ease of wearing and putting on and all of that. But I thought they looked great and happy, and it's always fun to see all the different teams coming out.
Yes.
The puzzle piece thing, I maybe missed some explanation of that at the beginning, because ultimately there was the mugshot of every athlete that was there. Right. So there must have been a big grid already, and they were just placing the one puzzle piece in, because obviously they didn't have all the faces on that one puzzle piece for that team. There were a few teams they could have.
Right, but some they wouldn't have been able to.
For the U.S., they would have had to have like a cart full of puzzle pieces.
Right.
So they must have had most of them on the ground. Did you see like any establishing shot of that, or were they just pretending that they were just putting these together?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they were just putting them together, but what they could have done is just spread them out so that, the teams that only had one person on their team obviously had more than one face on their puzzle piece. Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious as to how that actually worked, and I wasn't sure whether I missed something or if they had said that, or if they were just assuming you would figure it out.
Right. And then they were making this whole big deal about how it had to do with the fact that their theme about we all have heart. And so then after they put all the puzzle pieces together, then they projected a heart on top of it. Which I feel like you didn't need the puzzle pieces to project the heart. But the puzzle pieces were cool. I mean, I get what they were going for, but yeah, I don't know if that worked.
And I mean, even if that idea had worked, which I agree, it didn't quite. I mean, I like the concept. I think that's great. But the heart that they used was like an anatomical heart from like a medical book. It was super realistic, but just blown up really large. I was uncomfortable by that. Couldn't we have had a little more playful or warm image of a heart, and not like something you just ripped from somebody's chest? It was a little disturbing. I thought maybe I'm just sensitive to that sort of thing. I have to look away in medical dramas when they're doing bloody things. So it seemed to me not the kind of image you use for that purpose. But you can't complain too much. It's we missed nobody had their final catwalk in this one.
Yeah, no Giselle.
Yes, and as much as I loved the opening thing of the, I guess the head of the Paralympic Committee making his way there, wheeling through all different scenes, he never took a pipe through the middle of the earth like the...
I know. Shinzo Abe, I was waiting for that.
Exactly. Yeah,
that was a Tokyo thing.
That'll be the closing ceremony.
Yeah, or it'll be when he shows up in Tokyo in 4 years.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. But I was interested in seeing Amy Purdy. I was happy that she was participating in this, and I guess she's going to be a reporter for it too. So but I had to laugh the number of times they teased her appearance when there was still like an hour and a half left to go.
Yeah.
every commercial break. And so I don't know. NBC thinks she's a big draw. I guess we'll keep people waiting.
Right.
But she did. She was the runner-up on season 18 of Dancing with the Stars, losing to Meryl Davis, of course. So I thought she did very well. There were people who complained that she was given easier stuff to do. I thought she did great, and that the degree of difficulty needed to be factored in. But anyway, I'm always happy to see her again, and I thought she did a great job with that. I kind of wish she had a human partner to dance with and not a machine. I thought that concept also was a little weird.
I agree. I didn't really understand what they were trying to. What was their message? It didn't really.
Do not know. Something, I guess, the combination of human and technology that is involved in what some of these athletes use to compete. I did think it was super cool to see her dancing on those blades.
Yeah.
I remember when she was on Dancing with the Stars, she had a whole collection of feet that she used for different things, different kinds of shoes or different kinds of dances.
Right.
And I know the tippy-toe ones that she was using at the beginning, I think, were some of the hardest for her to dance on. So she's been practicing. But that was a neat thing. And nice that it kept it sort of in the Paralympic family. And I did feel like the color commentators for NBC, the people who basically have to talk for 3.5 hours, were less embarrassing than the ones for the Olympics. I did not miss Meredith Vieira. So maybe it's just because we know less about these things, so we're more interested in the factoids, or that the delegations are smaller, so they don't have to stretch quite so hard to find things to talk about. Yeah. But that still is, boy, is that a difficult job.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that they did a better job, and I did feel like I learned more things from watching this than I maybe did at the Olympics, because it's just something that people don't know as much about, that the number of people who compete in both Olympic and Paralympic events, the fact that there are so many Paralympians and so many events, partly because of the way that they classify the athletes. But it's going to be exciting to watch. So why don't you explain what you've learned about how we can we can watch it?
Well, I was going to mention we were both surprised to hear that there are more events in the Paralympics than there are in the Olympics. So I looked it up today, and the Olympics has 42 sports and 306 events. Paralympics has 23 sports, but 528 events. And this is because, for example, in the 50-meter freestyle swimming, Olympics has a men's and a women's. Paralympics has 11 different men's events and 10 different women's events. So they have 21 50-meter freestyle events. And it's because things are sorted by, there's a certain number of different, in terms of physical ability, from least impaired to most impaired. Then there's vision impaired, there's intellectually impaired, there's all these different permutations, and they try to group people in ways that they're competing against people with a similar level of ability.
Right.
So therefore you do get this huge number of different events per category. But they are going to be available to watch. They are not going to be available to watch in a particularly convenient way. So whereas the Olympics was kind of on all the time when it's on, the Paralympics, you got to search for it. And it will be at 1 a.m. on channel 212.
Right.
But it is there. I will put some links on our blog post for this episode that will direct you to teamusa.org. Has a list of all the NBC stuff and all the live streaming stuff they have. So live streaming is going to be a way that you can watch a lot of stuff during the day if that's what you wish to do. I was watching swimming and wheelchair basketball this morning. Very cool. The Paralympic.org website will also have some live streaming. I'm not sure country-wise whether Team USA has the rights to the live streaming in the U.S., and so therefore you can't watch it on Paralympic.org, but you can poke around. And NBC will have stuff every day. It's just at odd times, and it's not everything. And there will be, at the end of the Paralympics, I think they have a 2-hour prime time on actual real, prime NBC, the real NBC, the basic NBC with nothing affixed to it.
Okay.
We'll have like a 2-hour recap. So you can find all those times on the teamusa.org site that I will link to. And again, I will urge everybody, watch as much of this as you can. And even if you can just watch a little, do that. Just, look through your dial someday. Go look at NBC SN on your dial and see if anything's playing and watch it. I think that this deserves more coverage. I think it deserves more normal coverage. And it's never going to get that if people don't watch the coverage that's there. So seek it out. Watch some live streaming. Watch whatever you can on NBC. Talk about it on Twitter and Facebook, and get some interest going so that they will know that this is something that people are interested in.
Right.
There's some interesting stuff. I mean, there's fewer sports than the Olympics, but there's some sports that the Olympics don't have. That are specific to this population. So
and if you thought that Olympic athletes had some amazing backstories and inspiration, I mean, they mentioned last night or the other night in the opening ceremony the number of veterans that are involved. There are people who were participating in one sport as an able-bodied person and then had some kind of accident or whatever and then switched to a whole new sport once they became disabled. Just all different. There was a great profile I mentioned to you, Terri, in the New York Times sports section recently about the McFadden family. Tatyana McFadden is a Paralympic wheelchair racer, and she's going to be in 7 events.
She also does Winter Olympics too.
Yeah, and she does like every distance you can do, which you don't see that in the Olympic Games. And then she has a sister who also competes, and she's on a relay. And so there's some really good stuff.
Yeah, and if you go to that teamusa.org site to look at the schedule, poke around because they do have profiles of all the Paralympic athletes on there, so you can read about Team USA. And then, certainly if you Google around, you can find information about all the other different teams' athletes. So it's good stuff, and I wish that it was easier to see it, but it is out there. So go find it.
Yes. So we recommend it. All right. Very good. Thanks, Terri. Okay. So keep following the Paralympics because they're going to be going on.
Yes, please.
And we want to make sure they get some ratings and some viewers. So keep up with that. And then we're going to close out today's podcast with our Shameless Self-Promotion segment, where we direct you to some things on our own sites that we think you should take a look at. So Nicole, what do you have to mention today?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm in the midst of editing my book, so I have done absolutely nothing towards my website lately. But there's other interesting stuff going on around the internet that I've, posted or found. So just check me out on my social media channels under the Inclusive Class, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram too. So yeah, nothing really specific to promote other than the Inclusive Class.
You're out there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm there.
How about you, Terri?
Well, I think last week I mentioned parents gathering resources together to give to the school about their kids, and that I had a parents portfolio on my Mothers with Attitude site for that. I have added something to it, which is actually a Google Drive folder in which I have put a bunch of things that I often share to help people understand fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and how it might impact a young adult or a college age kid. And I think those things would be useful to a lot of parents. So I've shared the link on my Mothers with Attitude site. I'll share it on our blog description here too. Take a look at it. I've, screenshot things from the internet and just, highlighted the part that I think is particularly of interest. So these might be good for you to either print and hand out or to share the link to the folder with whoever in your child's life might need to see it.
Great.
Cool. And I'll just mention now that school is back in session for just about everyone. On Very Well, I have a list of after-school snacks that can double as dinner because, as you know,
I like that.
There's I mean, especially for my figure skater, she'll get home, it's almost 4 o'clock by the time she gets home, and then she's got to leave 4:30 for a couple hours worth of skating. So she needs an after school snack that is reasonably filling and healthy and can get her through to later in the evening. So I have some ideas for that on Very Well.
Okay,
Great.
very well. And that will be it for this week's episode of Parenting Roundabout. We hope you enjoyed it and that you will join us every week. You can listen to podcast episodes on parentingroundabout.com or download them from iTunes. Please subscribe so that you get all of our podcasts and mini podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter, where I am at Momitude, Catherine is at About Family Fit, Nicole is at Nicole Eridix, and Amanda is at Amanda Morin. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at Roundabout Chat and look for us on Facebook, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, and Instagram. Best of all, stop by our blog at parentingroundabout.com and read recaps, find links on all the stories we mention, and talk back in the comments. Thanks to John Moran for our in and out music. He is no longer editing our podcast, so if you notice a drop in quality, it is not his fault. I wish everybody a great week.